All right, so I'm here with Michael DePalma from Datto, and we're going to be talking about Datto's MDF and enablement programs. I was just explaining to Michael, like I'm taking it on as like a personal mission to go out there and find all these awesome programs that are out there for MSPs, and help them kind of connect with the vendors who they're already talking to, they're already working with, but maybe just figure out how to launch these programs, how to get the most out of these partnerships, and really ultimately help them grow. So welcome, Michael.
All right, thank you for having me.
So, full disclosure, Michael and I have actually worked together on a few events. So he was actually one of the first people I reached out to, because I've gotten to witness firsthand, on behalf of MSPs, what the Datto program is like. And to be honest, it's like one of my favorite programs. Number one, because it has a big reach, and number two, it's just so easy. Like you guys make it incredibly easy for the MSP to just, more specifically, I'm talking about the webinar program, and we'll get into that. But so kudos first and foremost. And so what I want to start off with is there's really two categories that I'm finding out exist out there. Number one is the reimbursement programs, right? So this is when let's say I come up with a marketing idea and I present it to you and I say, hey, we're going to sell more Datto if we launch this program.
Mm-hmm.
Will you reimburse some of the expenses, right? And the other is the enablement programs. This is maybe something that Datto has built, like tools and resources and that kind of thing that can just help them sell maybe their templates or,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. So I'd like to start with the reimbursement. So can you tell me a little bit about your reimbursement program, how it works, and you can even discuss the events, which I know is a big part of it.
Yeah. So really our program evolved when we had a gentleman, my colleague, Eric Torres, come on board. He worked for an MSP for like 10 years. And one of his jobs was to go out and find MDF funds. And he always said that the process was filling out a 15-page application and guaranteeing ROI and all of this. And so when we took it over, it was kind of, it was just really basic. Hey, if you reach a certain level, we'll give you some MDF funds. We didn't really have any resources behind us to overly support. It was just kind of funding, right? So we then started to get, me and him about 5 years ago, really get involved and talk to partners, and he kind of understood what they needed. And so now it's basically, let's think of a campaign. Maybe it's a live event. It used to be in the good old days, lunch and learns and dinners and things like that. Now that it's virtual, okay, let's see, what do we want to do? All right, well, let's put a budget together for it. And then we usually just approve up to a certain amount. So let's say it's going to be $2,000 for this lunch and learn was our estimate. But we're going to pad it, make sure that that's there. And then at the end of the day, we'll get the real expenses and say it's $1,800. You'd submit an invoice to us and we would write you a check for $1,800. So it's very simple in that we don't have to pay, separate checks for separate different things. It's let's get the whole campaign together. Here's what it's going to cost. Afterwards, you're going to send us an invoice and we're going to get it paid out to you. So it allows us to be really flexible in terms of the types of events we approve. I mean, we have granular analytics about everything, every dollar we've spent, but a lot of times they're creative ideas that maybe, Kevin, that's your job, right? You come up with these creative ideas and we're willing to listen to it. We're not overly rigid in saying, no, this money is only X, Y, and Z. We're willing to listen to different ideas. And then that leads to, if this was successful, next time I'm on a call with a partner and we're brainstorming ideas, I could point to, hey, it's a true story. I had a partner in Staten Island send potatoes out to people all throughout Staten Island. And you know what? I thought it was crazy. And when I brought it up to leadership, they thought I was crazy, but I trusted this partner and he closed 3 new clients because he sent a potato.
That's awesome.
So it's crazy.
And just for the cost of potatoes, right?
That's it. We paid for potatoes and postage.
Yeah.
I don't know. They stuck the stamp right on the potato. I don't know how it worked, but it worked for.
So that kind of leads me to my next thing is like, do you rely on the MSP to approach you with these, or is there any case where like you have kind of these pre-built programs that will work, kind of like the webinar that we've been working together on for a few different clients? Mm-hmm. And is that typically how it works? And can you kind of just walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, so normally what'll happen is that we present to the sales team. So my team is separate from sales. We're in business development. So we kind of, we're another layer kind of in between sales and marketing. So we regularly meet with the sales team saying, hey, you should be talking to your partners about this. This is a value add. This is something that comes with their partnership. And then they typically set up that call. And then it pivots from, a lot of MSPs that have never done something like this. So then I say, well, okay, well, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is a tried and true webinar style that we've been successful with. We'll dive into the ransomware report and some things. And so there's that, which normally for a first event, we kind of keep it relatively similar. A lot of the ones that I've done with you, Kevin. But then also we do a lot of brainstorming. I usually say, like, tell me what your marketing plan is for the next quarter or even the next 12 months, and put it all down. And even just that brainstorming session, then I could tell you, well, hey, you might be able to get some funds for this. This is something I know we won't be able to fund. And we go back and forth with that. So sometimes the partner or their consultant does drive a new idea. I'd probably say the majority are those kind of pre-built, we know it works, let's do it for you. We have some pre-built recordings and things like that. So it's a bit of both, but I'd say the traditional model is, here's what we do. This is all we do all day. I just counted them. I've done 41 webinars this year already for partners. So let's keep going. And then, I encourage setting it up as a series. Once partners understand that it works, let's do more of it. And if it didn't work, doesn't mean we're not going to give you money. We're just going to do something different,
The other thing that I think is worth kind of touching on is, because Datto is one of those vendors where it's a large part of the stack, right? And so does it have to be co-branded in every capacity, or is it just like, here's my marketing plan, but as Datto, you're 30% of my stack. So if I sell anything, you will benefit from it. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, I judge a successful event by how many clients you bring on, whether they're Datto clients or not, which obviously our sales team probably doesn't like to hear that, but I'm not compensated that way. But I think exactly right. So when we do these, and you've seen them, it's never a Datto pitch. And it's actually not good for a vendor to come in and pitch their thing, because then you're kind of just selling a widget as opposed to selling the partnership of what an MSP can do. So I normally, and within those presentations, I am really kind of talking about the value of that outsourced IT or a co-managed IT model. And we figure that eventually Datto will kind of fit into that. But the idea is to solve that immediate need of whatever that client has. So by no means does it have to be even co-branded. I prefer it to be, because we're channel only, it should be branded for the partner. Most folks aren't going to even know we're this large company, well known in the channel. A regular small business, because we're channel only, they don't see news ads, they don't see ads from us. So it should be branded for the partner. That's the goal, is to bring on new clients, brand it for you. And then, eventually the data will fit in. But I think it's really important to have those campaigns not be super salesy for a particular vendor, regardless of who you're working with.
So one of the things that I've noticed really is that and this is just my perception, but it feels like these are very underutilized. So like, I guess just straight out, tell me, if you had a best guess, what percentage of your partners actually have received MD, and maybe we could start with qualification. So like, of those who qualify, what percentage do you think actually utilize the program?
So I would say, based on partner tiers, and these are just numbers that I've seen, I bet you probably 75%, 70 to 75% of our partners qualify for MDF. So we've got 18,000 partners worldwide, which probably means 10,000 in North America, and that's what I track. I could tell you that we probably do 300 to 400 a year. So you start doing that math, it's a small percentage of partners that take advantage of this. And it's crazy, because I see partners out at events, and I said, I've known you for 5 years. You've never once come to me to ask for money. And sometimes it's because they don't know the program exists, which is a bad job by me, right? Or they're just, I've never done something like that, or we tried a webinar and it didn't work. And so those are the two reasons, but it's a small fraction. And I could tell you that at the global sales kickoff, the CRO kind of scolded the sales team, because we had, for the first time ever, we had money left in our budget. And part of that was from the pandemic, but we were still giving money out for webinars, and there was money left in the budget. And, the CRO was like, guys, the sales team, like, you got to let your partners know, like, it's good for Datto, I guess, that we didn't spend all the money, but it's not, because we get really successful ROI. So we got to make sure that if we've got this budget, we're utilizing it, which ultimately obviously flows down to the partners.
And I can tell you what was causing the hesitancy on the MSP side, because that's what I was experiencing with my own clients, right? And it was, it's like, okay, I know that I can do an event with Datto, but I'm worried because like I'm going to be the ones responsible for driving attendance, which they are uncomfortable with.
Mhm.
And on the other side, there's the idea of like, well, what if it doesn't work? Like we're not that good at marketing, right? So like we have very low confidence that something like this we would do, it would actually produce a result. And then like, are we on the hook for the funds and all of that? And so, I because of the situation I was in with my clients that we happen to work with together, I was able to answer those questions and or at least get them the answers and like kind of give them the confidence to just do it. But is that something that you see often, and how do you guys approach that?
Oh, all the time, especially pre-COVID when we were mostly doing live events. And I get that. I don't know if I could recruit live. I think when even back then, I would say, okay, well, let's start with a virtual webinar. It helps you with a couple things. You're going to do a little bit of trial and error and see how you got folks there. It's also going to help you just hear the messaging. Sometimes it's just good to hear how we present it to end users and all the rest. And then you work your way up to an event, because if it's a live event, and we try to make sure one of us, there's 4 of us in North America, that we're at live as many events as possible. But to that extent, because our bandwidth is, kind of pulled thin, that, we want to have 25 people there. And that's an intimidating number for a lot of folks, which is why I say, well, let's start with a webinar. And I also say, don't get discouraged if you have a handful of people. And other vendors might scold you. Like, we're still going to fund it if it's, because it's an up to amount. So we're still gonna help you fund all of that. If we agree to it, we're gonna hold by that. But don't be discouraged, because you know what, you're gonna do another one, and that 4 people might turn into 10 people. I actually had a webinar yesterday with a partner who we did 4. This was the 4th one. The first one, they had 3 people on it. They built it up. Yesterday had 38. And it was
Awesome.
steadily built up because it was part of a larger campaign of like, we're going to do this educational series. And then they had 38 people on it. And if they had just stopped because the first one didn't work, right, they wouldn't have had this successful event. So it is a mindset shift of, it might fail. Take the chance.
Yeah. And there, I'm sure that there's people, I know I'm a person that does this, where like I don't always attend the event, but I watch the replay. You know what I mean? And I think that there's like an increase in frequency, at least from my vantage point, that's happening almost more often, where you'll see like lower attendance, but then you'll start to nurture these leads after the fact, and it seems like, oh yeah, this is like legit. Like, people are opening the emails, they're clicking, and there's activity here. It's not like everybody just registered and then they're just ghosted, kind of immediately after. So, like, tell me, what is we're talking about like having success with the programs. You've done 40 of these this year. You could do this in your sleep. So like, what is those like major components to have success?
Well, I always start out with, all right, who do you want there? Who do you want in the room? Let's just not do it for the sake of doing it, right? And then from there, if it's going to be, all right, it's a completely net new, I've got this lead list, I'm going to start. You're going to have to understand that you're probably not going to get a lot of people live, but that recording is going to be very valuable. So in that regard, I want to keep it short, because I don't want somebody opening, recording, and it's 65 minutes long and they don't even know who you are. They're not going to listen to it. If it's that extent and you think that's the list, let's do something that's 15 to 20 minutes, because the bulk of the success is going to be there. Now, on the opposite spectrum, are you talking to prospects that you've been talking to for a while and they've never made the move, right? They'll pick up the phone if you call them, but maybe you've done a little bit of project work with them, but they've been hesitant to jump over. Well, for that, let's do a much more targeted, almost an engaging, let's try to only get 12, 15 people on it. And, we'll build the relationship that way. In that regard, one of the ways we've been using MDF, I have one coming up next week. I did one last week, a virtual wine tasting. So we're going to bring your biggest clients on. We're going to ship them a few bottles of wine paid for through our MDF program. And then we're going to, usually the winery will always have somebody on talking about the wines, and it becomes conversational. Partner does a little intro, first bottle of wine. I come on, do a little bit more, high level, 5-7 minutes, next thing. And then we have an open conversation. And I also tell them, you know what, invite some of your good clients there too. because they're going to be, even if they're not giving you a full-blown testimonial, they're going to be the champions in that little, chat while you were having wine, telling stories. And I'm there kind of as the MC trying to pull some of those stories out. So I think it comes down to who the audience is and understanding that if it's going to be net new, let's do it. Maybe don't even try to do it live. Let's do a recording and start blasting that out. Or we do a live webinar knowing that the recording will be there. And then, there's flexibility in what that messaging is, what that target is. But it really comes down to, is this a specific industry, seat size? Do I have, do some business with them? I want to expand. Those are all the factors that go into play in terms of like what we want to do.
I love the wine tasting thing. Is that like, you don't do that at 9 a.m, right? Like, is it typically and like afternoon at least?
Yeah, usually we do them 4:30, kind of end of the day. They've been cool. I've done actually, I have a cider tasting coming up. We did a virtual food. A chef came on and did one of those things. So we can get creative.
A virtual hibachi where they just throw the shrimp
in the thing. Yeah. Well, what's funny is I had to do a training for our team out in EMEA, and they're kind of behind in terms of MDF. And I think it's just not just Datto EMEA, but everybody understanding what that is. But we were talking about wine tastings, and they said, well, would you come on? And I'm like, well, you guys are 5 hours ahead of time. I don't know if I can drink wine at 11 a.m. I guess I could.
You could.
Clock,
yeah. Judging by behind you, I think you could.
We could tap into it. Yeah.
So, but that kind of leads me to the incentive, right? So like the ones that you and I have done together recently, we did like a delivery gift card for like a lunch. But I have noticed that like the second you put that thing up, you get people registering. So I had my partners like really scrubbing the list to make sure that there wasn't people, we actually like researched the people on LinkedIn. There was one that we did like accounting specific because they're like niche down. And, that was, in that case, we were looking at, because we had, I think there was like over 70 people that registered, like even in that short period of time right before. And so we were trying to get the list down as far as we could to make sure that like these are decision makers at accounting firms, and they're, they would be, you don't want to just start giving people that are like students and interns, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Free gift cards. So tell me a little bit about like that and like the balance of getting the incentive and putting it out there, but then making sure that you're not just throwing money away.
Yeah. And we saw a huge uptick in that for whatever reason, starting in December, because we do that in like our Datto hosted events. And we promote the $25 Uber Eats card. And then just starting in December, all of a sudden, this one webinar had like 270 registrants. And I said, this sounds, either you are the best marketer ever or something's fishy. And then we started diving in. There's a lot of EDU accounts. It comes from overseas. So we've put into it that you have to register with a business domain, and we require the organization. That allows you, because I usually use GoToWebinar or Zoom, either one, you could delete registrants. But we were getting, it became overwhelming with people saying, well, how come I'm not getting my gift card? And that it's some student looking for a free lunch, right? So there's that. So some of the other ways that we've done and kind of shifted the funding is we've done some raffles, and we do them kind of in the middle. I'll stop and do a poll. The polls are good for a couple of reasons as well. It kind of makes sure everybody's paying attention, but I'll do something simple. If it's a business continuity, is okay, what's your backup solution? And I did one for a partner in Indiana a couple of weeks back, and 33% of their attendees were still using tape. And so I was like, call those people immediately. But it allowed me you could actually see who voted for what. So now we get that data. Any kind of data is good, right? And then in the middle of it, we'll say, okay, we're going to raffle off $250 gift card. And we're going to do another one at the end to make sure everybody stays at the end. And what that allows you to do is in real time, you could look at the people on there and eliminate the people that are not real businesses. And then, pull it from the real 25 people that are real prospects there. And then you do it at the back end. So you get, break it up. You get some information out of that while they're waiting to see who wins the gift card. You're able to extract. Again, it comes down to who you want to talk to and what information you want to get from them. Are they work with a managed service provider? Well, that's a different conversation if they're not, right? Now you're trying to displace a competitor, or are you just trying to educate them on the ability to handle their IT? So that's kind of what we've done. And we could still do the Uber Eats card. It's just legwork, because you do have to just scrub that list and delete people. And it's, it almost becomes counterproductive to some extent. I know you went through a lot. That scrubbing the list is not fun.
Yeah, it is. And it's, at the same time, it's like, you want the event to be successful. You want to be able to actually like produce prospects in the end, you know? So it is kind of, it's like almost distracting because you're excited on one hand because you're generating registrants, but it's like false hope. You know what I mean? So you have to really be like honest with yourself and say, are these legitimate prospects? And then, you know, put them through. I love the idea of doing the polls within, because the other thing that does is like, it gives you different tracks now for follow-up. So like you could set up different drip campaigns after the event and send different emails for different answers of questions and that kind of thing. So the other thing that I think is great about the Datto program was that like you guys make it very easy as far as like you have the, you know, the platform set up. You'll create the landing page real quick. It's not like they have to go set up Zoom webinars and get to the subscription and the whole thing. So are there any other like benefits to that, you know, in that case that maybe we overlook that like are included in that program that, you know, typically think would be a hassle for the MSP?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think that's another factor that holds people back is I don't even know how to go about creating this link or being creative. So normally I just say, look, unless you have a platform that you like, and some partners have their own and they're used to doing webinars, let me handle that. I will handle creating the registration page. You know, I run the registration reports. I have a time blocked off every morning to run those reg reports for the webinars I have scheduled. I'll handle the recording, get that to you, the attendee report that gives you all those details about who answered what. So again, it's trying, as a vendor, it's trying to take a lot of that kind of busy work out of the way. That can be a barrier just because of the unknown. I think once you do one of them, you'll realize like, it really wasn't that hard. But the barrier is, I don't even know where to start. So instead of sitting there staring at a blank screen, Datto will give you the ability to say, well, we have essentially what is a pre-built campaign. We'll get this off the ground for you. And then as we move along, we'll be able to get more creative and do more customized things. So I think that's kind of the goal. And I think a lot of vendors are kind of moving into that, you know, kind of space because it makes sense for us, you know.
That is like perfect segue to my last question, which is basically like, how do they get started? You know, like you mentioned, contact your sales rep. Is that the best way to do it? And, you know, how do they get it moving forward as fast as possible?
Yeah, so everything normally gets funneled through that account rep. And then, you know, it's a very simple process though. Basically, you just get an email. I mean, I'm on calls all day with partners. So reach out to your account rep. If you have any just simple questions, and Kevin can share you my email, but it's just mdepalma@datto.com. I could send you some recordings, some sample slide decks, things like that. We have a Market Now platform that partners use. That's not something my team specifically does, but there are pre-built campaigns within that. So again, everything, I would use your account rep as your point person, but then, you know, we'll jump in as soon as possible.
What I'll actually do is like when we post this on our website, I'll set up a little form that'll just send you an email. So like, and if you're cool with that,
Yeah.
you know, then basically anybody who's watching this video can just fill out their like question, fire it off, and then it'll go to you. And then I'll make sure that you're not getting spammed as well. But you
Yeah.
know, well, I don't know if we'll keep that form open permanently, but we'll at least do it just to make it like one step easier for everybody.
And to be honest, I have calls with non-partners that I meet at events. You know, you make friends going on the channel. I have calls with people that aren't Datto partners just to brainstorm. So even if you want to just chat, I mean, that's basically all I'm doing right now. So until we start traveling again. So I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody. So just reach out anytime.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate your time.
All right, great. Good to see you as always.